Hey everybody, welcome to another support video. This one's on Understanding Linear Functions version 4. Basically, I'm just going to go through the process of how to write a y equals mx plus b equation for lines given to you on a graph. So if you're given a line that's on a graph, how can you find the y equals mx plus b for that line? So we look at the first line here, line number 1. You can see this is a downward slope, so this is going to be a negative multiplier. So remember, if it goes from left to right, goes down, it's going to be a negative slope. If it goes up, it's going to be a positive slope. And if it goes flat, it's zero slope. And if it's like vertical like this, it's undefined, okay? So in this situation, we're going to get a negative slope for this one. So since it can't see exactly where it crosses the y-axis, we're going to start with the slope. So all you got to do is identify the change in y relative to the change in x. So the change in the y direction from one identifiable point to the next is down 2, and the change in the x direction is to the right 3. So the slope for this particular line is just going to be -2 change in y and +3 for change in x. So the slope for that line is going to be -2 over +3, or -2/3. Okay? Once you identify the slope, the next thing you're going to want to do is to identify at least one of the ordered pairs. I would recommend doing two, one to use to find the equation and the other one to check. And so in this case, we can see that the x value is a -11, and the y value is 8. So our first ordered pair is -11, 8. Our other ordered pair that we can use to check the answer is going to be -8, 6. -8, 6. And so now we've got our 2 points and we've got our slope, more than enough to find the equation of the line. So then we go down to our box. We know that it is a slope of -2/3. So I'm going to just write m equals -2/3. And I'm going to pick one of the points to use here. So let's just pick the -11, 8 point. So here we have -11, 8. That is our x and our y. So we have an x, a y, and an m. The only thing we're missing is a b. So we're just going to plug into y equals mx plus b, right? The m is the slope. The b is the y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis. The x and y are input and output relationship, of course, the order pair. And so now in this situation, we're going to take the y value, 8. We're going to set that equal to the m value, which is -2/3. We're going to times that by the x value, which is -11. And then we're going to add the unknown y-intercept, which is b. We don't know what that is. So what is -2/3 times -11? Well, -2/3 times -11 is going to be positive, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And 2 times 11 is 22. So this is going to be positive 22/3 plus b. Now 22/3, that's the same as 7 1/3. So I'm just going to rewrite that as 8 is equal to 7 1/3 plus b. And you want to minus the 7 1/3 from both sides to get the b by itself. And when you do that, you're going to say 8 take away 7 1/3. That's just going to be 2/3. Because basically that's the same as 7 3/3. 7 3/3 take away 7 1/3 is 2/3. And so we know that 2/3 is b. Now look at the graph and see if that makes visual sense to us. Does it look like if you were to extend this line out, right? Like let's say you extended it, and just in theory, let's take this line and extend it. Does it look like it's going to cross the y-axis at about 2/3? And it looks like it could, based on the visual of the graph, it could be a half, right? It could be 2/3. It's slightly beyond half, I think, right? So remember, the graph is just a approximation. It's not an exact answer. So as long as it's reasonable to think about being 2/3, then it's probably 2/3, right? I would trust the math more than the graph. The graph's a slight approximation, basically, because you never do perfect line through the dots. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. And now we can kind of say that's a reasonable answer. We'll check it with the next point, -8 6. So now we're going to grab that second point, -8 6, and we're going to check to see if this is, of course, a true statement. So we're going to check it with -8 6. So let's do a little check with -8 6. Do a little check to see if this is a point on the line. It should be, right? So if everything's correct, this point should be on the equation we come up with. So our equation is going to be y equals -2/3 times x, and then plus 2/3. And let's just see if that would work with -8, 6. So when x is -8, you get -2/3 times -8, which would be -16/3. -16/3 sorry, it'll be a positive 16 thirds because negative times negative is positive. So it'll be positive 16 thirds. Positive 16 thirds plus 2 thirds is going to be 18 thirds. And what is 18 divided by 3? 6. So that works fine. So we've checked it, we know it works, and we're good to go. Okay? So that is our correct answer for number 1. All right, now let's look at number 2. Number 2 is a very, very steep positive slope. You can see that. So you expect a slope that's much greater than 1 absolute value. So remember, if it's an absolute value multiplier between 0 and 1, it's a gradual line, either up or down. If it's an absolute value that's beyond 1, it's probably in a situation like this where you have equal intervals on x and y, it's going to be greater than a 45-degree angle. And this definitely looks like greater than a 45-degree angle. This is very steep. So I'm expecting a slope like 4, 5, 6, something like that. Something that's pretty steep. So let's take a look at the slope here. I don't know where it crosses the y-axis. It's obviously going to be somewhere very positive, like somewhere way up there, like 15, 20, something like that at least. I'm going to go probably even more than that. All right, I'm going to go take a look at the slope here then. So let's grab the slope. I'm going to do this one in purple. So from point to point, just go change in y. So change in y is up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have a change in y of up 5. And then change in x is going to be to the right 1. So this is a positive slope like we talked about, up 5 and to the right 1. So change in y, positive 5, change in x, positive 1. So let's write that in. So that's a slope of 5 over 1. So our slope for this second line is going to be 5 over 1. And our 2 points that we can identify here, this point here is negative 5, 4. So we got negative 5, 4 as 1 point. Let's just write that a little neater. Thank you. And the other point that we have here is negative 6 and negative 1. Okay, it doesn't matter which point we use to solve. We can use either one. I'm going to use negative 5, 4. So let's go down to our little space down here. Let's write down what we know. We have the slope of the line, which is 5. And we know we've got negative 5, 4 as one of our points, which has an x and a y order pair. Right? So we're all set. So now all we got to do is take this and plug it into y equals mx plus b. So we know the y value 4 is equal to the m value 5 times the x value of negative 5 plus whatever the y-intercept is, wherever crosses the y-axis. Well, that's going to be 4 equals negative 25 plus b. You add 25 to both sides to solve for b. You guys are going to get 29 is equal to b. And like we said, very high positive value for the y-intercept. And I thought it'd be more than 20, and I was right. So yeah, 29. All right, cool. So we know the equation then for this one's going to be y is equal to 5x plus 29. It crosses the y-axis at 29 and goes up 5 to the right 1. All right, that is our universal equation of the line and slope intercept form. Now, in order to check this to make sure we have the correct line, make sure we didn't make any boo-boos, we're going to just grab the second point here, which is negative 6, negative 1, and make sure that this gives us a true statement. So let's just check it with negative 6, negative 1. Negative 6, negative 1. So 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. Negative 30 plus 29, what's that equal to? Negative 1. Perfect. Check. So we know that we got it right. This is the correct equation. It works for both points. All right, let's take a look at line number 3. All right, line number 3 is a more gradual positive slope. So it's going to have a positive multiplier, and it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 1 absolute value. So probably a fraction. And let's take a look at this actual slope. Let's pick a nice line here. Color. Let's do a line color that is blue this time. All right, so change in y, we're changing x. So we're going to go up 1 unit and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, it looks like. Double check it. Up 1 to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our staircase of movement along the line. Call it the slope, the multiplier. So that is going to be a slope of 1, positive 1, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, positive 5. So that's a slope of 1/5. Like we said, it's going to be an absolute value that's between 0 and 1, and it is 0.2. So now we're going to just identify these two ordered pairs. So the first ordered pair here we have is an x value of 4, y value of 4. So the ordered pair of 4, 4. This is another ordered pair here that we have. This is 9, 5. So 9, 5. And we're going to pick either one to use to solve. I'm going to use the 4, 4, and we'll check it with the 9, 5. All right, so let's write our information to our box here. We know that the slope for this line is 1/5. We know that the point we're looking at is 4, 4, and that's our x and our y. So we got our m, our x, and our y. The only thing we're missing is the y-intercept, the b. So let's plug into y equals mx plus b. We know that this is going to be a y value. 4 is equal to the slope, 1/5 times the x value, 4, plus whatever the y-intercept is. So that means we get 4 is equal to 4/5, if I can write carefully, 4/5 plus b. You're going to minus 4/5 to both sides. Well, this is the same as 3 and 5/5. Take away 4/5. So that's going to be 3 and how many fifths? And 1/5. So it looks like 3 and 1/5 is our b value. Now let's just check that visually. So if we were to extend this line and have it intersect the y-axis, does it look like it could cross the y-axis around 3 and 1/5? Let's see if it does. Yeah, that looks pretty good, right? You guys can see where it crosses right above the 3, but not even close to the 4, right? So it looks like it would be about 1/5 of the way between 3 and 4. So our visual check confirms what we thought, that our line does look right. Okay, so we're going to write down our equation for our line. It's going to be, in this case, y equals multiplier, which is 1/5 slope, times the x, universal x, right? Plus the 3 and 1/5 y-intercept. And we're going to check it with the other point that we had here. And the other point we had is 9, 5. So I'm just going to write check 9, 5. We'll do this little mental check here. All right, so 1/5 times 9. So 1/5 times 9 is 9/5. 9/5 is the same as 1 4/5. 1 4/5 plus 3 and 1/5 is going to be 5. So yeah, that works. And so now we've checked it. We know that's a good equation of the line. We're good to go. The other three lines on these pages are pretty easy. One of them is proportional, and then the other ones are horizontal and vertical. So in a proportional line, the y-intercept is 0, so it's just going to be y equals kx. So this is a really nice, easy one for us. So we can see our proportional line right here. It goes through the point 0, 0. So that means our y-intercept is 0, and our x-intercept is 0. All you got to do is identify one ordered pair here. So it's going to be 2 and -4. So 2, -4 is our ordered pair that we have identified. And once you have that, all you got to do to find the multiplier is just y over x, because the slope of a proportional line is just the ratio of y over x. Because as you guys can see, if I were to do the staircase of movement along this line, it's just from the origin, right? So how far down is it? It's going to be -4 down, right? Which is just the y value. And how far to the right is it? It's going to be 2 to the right, which is just the x value. So when you do the slope for a proportional line, it's literally just the ratio of y over x. So this is going to be -4 over +2. And we can simplify that, right? So that would be -2, right? So this is a slope of -2, down 2 to the right 1, down 2 to the right 1. Perfect, we're back on the line. So that would be the staircase of movement along this proportional line. So the equation for number 5 is really easy. All you have to do for number 5 is y equals -2x, and you're done. That's the slope. Now for number 4, it's a horizontal line. So this is the set of all values where y is -8. So we just write y equals -8. Horizontal lines are just going to be y equals. So number 4 is going to be y equals -8. And that is a horizontal line. Horizontal lines are always a y equals line. Vertical lines are always going to be an x equals line. So this one's going to be an x equals line for number 6. And it's a set of all values where x is what? 10. So it's going to be a set of all values where x is 10. So then we just write x equals 10. And this is a vertical line. And now you guys have seen how to do all these problems from beginning to end. I hope that helps you and you were able to learn something from it.